When you hear the name Rothschild, you probably think banking, right? Immense wealth, power, that sort of thing. But what if I told you they were basically 19th century tech pioneers? In this explainer, we're going to unpack how they built a private internet of their own, long before we had silicone or satellites.
So, let's start with the big question. How did they actually do it? I mean, think about it. In an era of huge empires and constant revolutions, how does a single family climb to the very top to become the wealthiest on the entire planet? Well, the answer is surprisingly modern.
And here it is. This is the key. The Rothschilds understood something absolutely fundamental. Real power wasn't just about gold bars or government bonds. No, it was about knowing things before anyone else did. Their real currency was information.
Now, to really get their genius, you have to picture the world they were living in. This was Europe way before the telegraph. This was a world where information moved at the speed of a horse, or maybe a ship if you were lucky. And that meant news was often dangerously out of date by the time it got to you.
Europe at the time was just chaotic. It was a patchwork of different kingdoms, and they were constantly at war. The official postal systems run by the state, they were slow, they were inefficient, and you could bet they were being spied on. So for a financier, the single biggest risk wasn't making a bad investment. It was making a decision based on old news. What we'd call information latency today, well, back then, it could absolutely ruin you.
So, what was the Rothschilds' big solution to this problem? Well, they built their own network. Not with wires or code, of course, but with something they knew was far more reliable: family.
The patriarch, a man named Meyer Amschel Rothschild, had this brilliant idea. He sent his 5 sons to the 5 key financial hubs of Europe: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, with the home base staying in Frankfurt. Now, you gotta understand, these weren't just separate banks. They were synchronized nodes in a massive continent-spanning intelligence machine, and they were all bound together by blood. You can actually think of their technology stack as a system with 3 distinct layers. First, they had their own dedicated couriers, riding fresh horses who could easily outpace the official government mail. Second, they owned private ships, so they could get messages across the English Channel no matter what the weather was doing. And third, for really urgent, bite-sized bits of data, like stock prices, they even used homing pigeons.
Okay, so speed is one thing, but it's totally useless without security. How did they protect their data? Well, they had their own form of encryption. It was called Deutsch. They would write in German but using Hebrew letters, which made their private letters completely unreadable to any government spies who might intercept them. This let them talk candidly about political secrets, market strategy, you name it, all while knowing their information was completely safe.
All right, this brings us to probably the most famous story about the Rothschild network: the Battle of Waterloo. It's a tale that has been twisted and turned over the years, so right now, let's separate the legend from the actual ledger.
You see, the popular myth, which, let's be honest, is often rooted in some pretty ugly anti-Semitism, claims that Nathan Rothschild got the news from the battlefield via pigeon, then deliberately crashed the London Stock Exchange to scoop everything up for pennies. The reality, though, is completely different, and frankly far more strategic. First off, he wasn't even at the battle. He was in London. The news came from a trusted courier, not a pigeon. And his first move? It wasn't to trick the market. It was to inform the British government that Wellington had won.
This timeline just shows you how fast their network was. It's incredible. On the morning of June 21st, a Rothschild agent sends the news of Napoleon's defeat. By that very same afternoon, Nathan has the letter in his hands in London. The official government messenger, he doesn't even show up until that night. And the public doesn't read about it in the papers until the next day. The Rothschild network was nearly a full day ahead of the state itself.
So here's the crucial point, the real genius of the whole thing. The financial win wasn't about some shady one-day market trick. No way. It was a brilliant, long-term bet. Knowing for a fact that Napoleon was defeated for good, Nathan started buying up British government bonds, which were selling at huge wartime discounts. He was gambling that with peace finally secured, the value of those bonds was going to skyrocket over the next couple of years. It was foresight, not fraud. And this information advantage wasn't just for market trades. The Rothschilds used it to operate on a truly global scale, financing kings and literally shaping the destiny of nations. Take a look at this number, £4 million. Now, in 1875, that was a colossal, almost unbelievable sum of money. And it represents the exact moment the Rothschilds' private intelligence network directly changed the map of the British Empire. So here's how it all went down. The ruler of Egypt was secretly trying to sell his shares in the Suez Canal. A Rothschild agent got the intel first and went straight to the British Prime Minister. Now, Parliament wasn't in session, so there was no way to approve the funds. So Lionel D. Rothschild just fronted the £4 million himself, all based on a gentleman's agreement. In one move, this single deal secured Britain's vital lifeline to India and completely checkmated French influence in the region. It was a geopolitical masterstroke, executed with the speed of a private message.
But here's the thing about any information monopoly. They never last forever. The very forces of industrialization that the Rothschilds helped finance would, ironically, end up creating a technology that would make their greatest advantage totally obsolete. And the disruption? It came from one single invention, the telegraph. All of a sudden, information that took their best couriers days to deliver could now cross all of Europe in a matter of minutes. Their private, exclusive network was suddenly replaced by a public one. Speed, which had been their decisive advantage, was now a commodity available to just about anyone.
But the family didn't just collapse. So how did they survive? They pivoted. They adapted. Realizing they couldn't win on speed anymore, they completely shifted their strategy. They moved from being the primary lenders to governments to being the indispensable advisors for governments and big corporations. And that's a role they still play to this day.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question for our own time, doesn't it? I mean, we live in an age of infinite, instantaneous data, with AI churning through it all. But as the Rothschild story shows us, maybe the ultimate advantage isn't just having the information first. Maybe it's having that trusted, intelligent network that knows what to do with it. What do you think?